get the analysis. Nadim SHEHADI joins us. He's Executive Director of the Lebanese American University. Good evening to you, sir. There was already, or rather there were already, entrenched issues before that massive explosion that wrecked the port of Beirut back in August 2020, and things from then, of course, getting worse. How long do you think this unrest and this anger can continue?
Well, it's not a question of the unrest or the anger. It's a question of how long can the crisis continue. The unrest and the anger will grow as the crisis becomes deeper. And I think we're just at the beginning of the financial crisis. We haven't seen the worst yet in terms of total financial meltdown, which could happen soon if there is no government, if the political process remains blocked. We are facing a much worse situation, and we will see real protests. These are shy protests relatively to what we've seen before in 2005, 2019, or 2017.
The word of the president, clearly, Nadim SHEHADI, hasn't been listened to in terms of calling on people not to protest. People are angry for the reasons you've pointed out. Is there a fear that the military may step in at some point?
Well, the military, I mean, there was a speech by the head of the army, but it was seen as a political speech because the head of the army sees himself sometimes as a candidate for the next presidency. What's happening also is that the president sees the protests as directed against him, and they are increasingly being directed against the president and his allies. The protesters were very shy of mentioning anything political before. And they all threw the same slogans, but they each meant something different with it. So the same slogan the main slogan, let's say, which says all means all, meaning all the political class is guilty, could mean that Hezbollah is innocent because Hezbollah is part of the political class, so it's not the main target. But other people say all means all because in 2016, when Nasrallah was included in the political class, his thugs went downtown, beat up the protesters, so they took his picture out. So when anti-Hezbollah people say all means all, they mean specifically Hezbollah. So it's still blur. The protesters have not formed a political demand or political movement yet, and they don't have a role to play, and the system is still blocked. It's still blocked in the same way as it was blocked in 2006, 2009, 2013 to 2016 because of the inability to form a government, because of a veto by mainly by Hezbollah. So the problem is still there. When President Macron asks the Lebanese to form a government, if they could form a government, they would need him to ask them. The main reason for the whole meltdown is the paralysis because of the inability to form a government.
And in some way, is that inability all due to the nature of how Lebanese politics is organized? People in the street have been calling for reform of how politics is, that sectarian nature of Lebanese politics.
Yes. So, I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of self-flagellation, if you like, from in the street. The country is in a state of despair, of complete defeat, and they're sort of saying, they're in a very negative outlook to the country. They're saying that the country was never real, that the whole 100 years since its foundation was fake, that we never had a real state, that the politicians have always been corrupt, there's never been. So we are in this sort of self-flagellation mode. There needs to be a proper re-examination by the young generation of the political process and what they want, and they need to be divided, I would say, because they're so afraid of being divided that they're not talking politics. This is a political crisis. They need to talk politics. They need to articulate the various visions, and we need to have elections according to the visions. Politics is about managing divisions and managing different opinions. It's not about unity and having strong leadership or even honest leadership.
Nadim SHEHADI, thank you very much indeed for giving us that analysis. Clearly, there is a lot of ground to be covered before Lebanon gets to the point you're talking about. We'll continue to cover the stories and call on you, sir, for analysis. Thank you very much indeed. Nadim SHEHADI, Executive Director of the Lebanese American University.